The last city on Zephyros burned under a crimson sky. Chief Navigator Vexhai stood at the observation deck of the Central Command Tower, watching as the crystalline creatures swarmed across the horizon like a living tide of death. The Void Swarm had consumed everything in its path for 3 long years, leaving behind nothing but empty worlds stripped down to bare rock. Vexhai's elongated fingers trembled as they gripped the railing. The Zephyrian's pale blue skin had grown even paler in recent weeks as food supplies dwindled and hope faded. Behind those large, dark eyes lay the weight of an entire civilization's final moments. The proud empire that once ruled 12 star systems was now reduced to this single fortress city, and even that would fall within days. The communication officer, young Kethan, rushed up the curved stairs to the observation platform. Her breathing came in short gasps, and her usually pristine uniform was stained with sweat and fear. Chief Navigator, the outer defenses have been breached. The energy barriers are failing faster than our engineers can repair them. Vexhai nodded slowly, never taking those dark eyes off the approaching swarm. Each creature stood as tall as a Zephyrian, their bodies made of sharp, gleaming crystal that reflected the dying light of their star. They moved with perfect coordination, like fingers of the same hand, destroying everything they touched and absorbing the materials into their collective mass. "How long do we have?" Vexhai asked. "Perhaps 6 hours, maybe 8 if we overload the remaining power cores," Kethan replied. "But Chief Navigator, there is something else. The Archives Division has located the ancient emergency beacon." For the first time in weeks, Vexhai turned away from the window. The emergency beacon was a relic from the old empire, built during the expansion wars centuries ago. It was designed to send distress signals across vast distances, reaching any civilization capable of faster-than-light travel. The beacon had never been used because the Zephyrians had never faced a threat they could not handle alone. "Are you certain it still functions?" Vexhai asked. "The technicians believe so. It would broadcast on all known communication frequencies, sending our location and a complete record of the Void Swarm threat to every spacefaring species within 1,000 light-years." Vexhai considered this carefully. The Zephyrians knew of other civilizations in the galaxy, the scholarly Etherians who spent their time studying ancient texts and debating philosophy. The militaristic Corvan Federation, with their impressive fleets and rigid honor codes. The technologically advanced Nexus Collective, who had mastered artificial intelligence and robotics. All of these species were powerful, intelligent, and civilized. But would they help? The Void Swarm was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. These creatures did not conquer or enslave. They simply consumed everything, turning entire worlds into empty shells. Any species that came to fight them would risk facing the same fate as the Zephyrians. "Chief Navigator," Kethan pressed, "the decision must be made quickly. If we are going to activate the beacon, it must be done before the power grid fails completely." Outside, the sounds of battle grew louder. Explosions echoed across the city as the remaining defense turrets fired desperately at the advancing swarm. The crystalline creatures absorbed each blast, their bodies growing slightly larger with every attack. They were learning, adapting, becoming stronger with each moment. Vexhai closed those large eyes and thought of the billions of Zephyrians who had already died. Entire families consumed in moments, children who would never grow up, artists whose songs would never be heard again, scientists whose discoveries would be lost forever. The weight of all those lost lives pressed down like a physical force. "Activate the beacon," Vexhai said quietly. Kethan nodded and spoke quickly into her communication device. Deep beneath the command tower, ancient machinery hummed to life for the first time in centuries. Massive transmitters powered up, drawing energy from the city's failing power grid. The beacon reached out across space, sending the same message in hundreds of different languages and communication protocols. The message was simple but desperate. "This is the Zephyrian Empire. We face extinction from an enemy we cannot defeat. The Void Swarm consumes everything in its path. We have included all data on their capabilities and weaknesses. If any civilized species receives this message, please help us. Please remember us." The signal spread outward at the speed of light, carrying with it holographic records of the swarm's attacks, detailed scans of the creature's biology, and tactical reports from 3 years of desperate fighting. It reached the nearest civilizations within hours. The Etherian Council received the message during one of their lengthy philosophical debates. The elder scholars examined the data with their usual careful attention to detail. They discussed the moral implications of intervention versus self-preservation. They debated whether it was wise to risk their peaceful civilization for strangers. After much consideration, they decided that engaging such a dangerous enemy would be illogical and irresponsible. The Corvin Federation analyzed the tactical data with military precision. Their war councils ran computer simulations and calculated probable outcomes. The results were clear. Even their mighty fleets would suffer massive casualties fighting the Void Swarm. The risk to their own people was too great. They began reinforcing their border defenses instead. The Nexus Collective processed the information through their advanced artificial intelligence networks. The AIs calculated that intervention would result in a 73.6% chance of significant losses to their own forces. The logical conclusion was to avoid contact and hope the threat would burn itself out before reaching their territory. One by one, every major civilization in the galaxy made the same rational decision. They would not help. But the beacon's signal continued to spread, reaching farther than its builders had ever intended. It traveled beyond the established trade routes and diplomatic channels, out to the frontier regions where fewer civilizations bothered to maintain listening posts. In a small, unremarkable star system on the galaxy's outer rim, the signal finally found someone listening. The system contained a single life-bearing planet, a world the galactic community had surveyed centuries ago and dismissed as too dangerous for civilized life. The planet's surface was racked by earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. Its weather patterns were chaotic and violent. Its native life forms were unusually aggressive and adaptable. The planet was called Earth, and its dominant species had recently achieved basic space travel. They had built a few colonies on nearby worlds and established some primitive space stations. By galactic standards, they were barely more advanced than Stone Age primitives. But the humans received the Zephyrian distress signal. And unlike every other species in the galaxy, they did not spend time calculating risks or debating logical responses. They saw people dying and they decided to help. On Luna Station, Admiral Sarah Chen stared at the translated message and the horrifying images it contained. Around her, the United Earth Defense Council argued about resources and capabilities and political implications. But Chen was not thinking about politics or logic. She was thinking about the children in those images, the families being torn apart, the desperation in that alien navigator's final message. "We answer the call," she said simply, and across human space, every available ship began preparing for war. Admiral Sarah Chen had not slept in 36 hours. She stood in the war room of Luna Station, surrounded by holographic displays showing ship movements across human space. The alien message played on repeat in the corner of the room, those desperate words echoing through the sterile chamber. The United Earth Defense Council had been in emergency sessions since the signal arrived. Representatives from Mars, the Belt Colonies, Europa Station, and the outer settlements argued back and forth about humanity's response. Some urged caution. Earth's fleet was small compared to what they had seen of galactic civilizations. Their technology was primitive. Their weapons were crude. We're talking about sending our entire military capability into unknown space to fight an enemy we don't understand, argued Counselor Williams from the Mars Defense Force. This could be the end of human expansion beyond Earth, General. Morrison from the Colonial Defense Corps shook his head. The data is clear. These void swarm creatures consume everything they encounter. If we don't stop them now, they'll eventually reach human space anyway. Chen watched the debate with growing impatience. Her weathered face bore the scars of the Titan War and the asteroid mining conflicts. She had spent 40 years defending humanity's interests in space, and she understood something the politicians did not. "You're all missing the point," Chen said quietly, and the room fell silent. "This isn't about military strategy or resource allocation. This is about who we are as a species." She walked to the center of the room where the holographic image of the dying Zephyrian city rotated slowly. The crystalline creatures could be seen swarming through the streets, consuming everything in their path. "Our ancestors faced extinction events before," Chen continued. "Ice ages, volcanic eruptions, plagues, predators that were bigger and stronger than us. Every time the logical response would have been to hide and hope for the best. But humans don't do logical. We do what's right." The debate continued for another hour, but Chen could see the shift in the room. Humanity had not conquered Earth by being reasonable. They had survived because when faced with impossible odds, they fought back. The final vote was unanimous. Within 2 hours of the decision, mobilization orders went out across human space. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Every military vessel received deployment orders. The corporate fleets of Mars, the mining consortiums of the Belt, the colonial defense forces of the outer worlds, all set aside their usual conflicts and territorial disputes. Commander, Rodriguez of the cargo hauler New Horizon was delivering supplies to Ceres Station when the call came through. His ship was not built for combat, but within 6 hours his crew had welded armor plating to the hull and mounted mining lasers as weapons. If the military needs ships, they've got ships, he told his crew. Captain Williams of the research vessel Endeavour was conducting deep space surveys near Pluto when her orders arrived. The ship's scientific equipment was quickly converted for military use. The geological survey charges became improvised explosives. The atmospheric analysis probes were retrofitted as reconnaissance drones. On Mars, the industrial complexes worked around the clock. Civilian spacecraft were converted into troop transports. Manufacturing plants switched from consumer goods to ammunition. The entire planet became a military production center. In the asteroid belt, mining operations shifted to extracting raw materials for weapons and armor. The massive ore haulers that normally carried metals to the inner planets now carried missiles and supplies for the growing fleet. The outer colonies contributed what they could. Europa Station provided medical supplies and personnel. Titan Base offered their expertise in hostile environment operations. Even the remote research outposts sent what few ships they had. As the fleet assembled at the edge of the solar system, the numbers were staggering. Over 10,000 vessels of all sizes and types. Sleek military destroyers flew alongside converted cargo ships. State-of-the-art fighters shared space with mining vessels equipped with improvised weapons. The ships themselves told the story of humanity's approach to problems. Where other species might use elegant energy shields, human vessels relied on thick armor plating. Instead of precise energy weapons, they carried kinetic railguns and nuclear missiles. The designs prioritized durability over efficiency, hitting power over elegance. Admiral Chen transferred her flag to the dreadnought Terra's Wrath, the newest and most powerful ship in the human fleet. As she reviewed the final preparations, she received a communication from an unexpected source. Admiral Chen, this is Dr. Elizabeth Nakamura at the Biological Research Institute on Europa. I've been studying the data from the alien distress signal. I believe I may have found something important. The holographic image of Dr. Nakamura appeared in Chen's ready room. The scientist looked tired but excited. The crystalline creatures in the data show signs of biological and technological integration. They're not just machines or just organisms. There's something in between. What does that mean for our weapons? Chen asked. It means conventional military tactics might not be enough. But humans have something other species don't. We've learned to fight with everything available to us. Biological warfare, psychological warfare, environmental weapons. We need to think beyond traditional combat. Chen nodded. Send your recommendations to all ship commanders. We'll use every advantage we can get. As the fleet prepared to depart, messages poured in from across human space. Families saying goodbye to loved ones. Workers volunteering for the dangerous mission. Children sending drawings and letters of support to the crews. But it was not just support they received. Intelligence networks across human space had been monitoring galactic communications, and the news was sobering. Every major civilization had received the same distress call. All of them had decided not to help. They think we're primitives, muttered Captain Torres of the destroyer, defiant, as he read the intelligence reports. Let them. They'll learn what primitives can do when someone threatens innocent people. The final preparations were completed as Earth's star grew smaller behind them. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of Terra's Wrath, watching as 10,000 ships oriented themselves toward the distant Zephyrian system. The journey would take weeks, even at maximum faster-than-light capability. All ships, this is Admiral Chen, she broadcast to the fleet. We go to war not for conquest or glory, but because people are dying and we're the only ones willing to help. Show the galaxy what humanity stands for. The fleet jumped to faster-than-light speed, leaving the solar system behind. They carried with them the hopes of Earth and the determination that had carried humanity from caves to the stars. Behind them, monitoring stations belonging to various galactic civilizations detected the human fleet's departure. The observers noted the primitive ship designs and crude weapons with dismissive interest. How could such a young, unsophisticated species hope to succeed where established powers had refused to try? They would soon learn that sophistication and logic were not always the most important factors in a war. Chief Navigator Vexhai had given up hope 3 days ago. The last city on Zephyros was down to its final defensive barriers, and the Void Swarm pressed closer with each passing hour. The crystalline creatures had learned to absorb the energy from their weapons, growing stronger with every attack. It was only a matter of time now. Then the sensors detected something impossible. Chief Navigator, called Sensor Operator Thayek from across the command center. I'm reading massive faster-than-light signatures approaching the system. Multiple contacts, very large formation. Vexhai rushed to the sensor station expecting to see the arrival of another Void Swarm fleet. Instead, the displays showed something unprecedented. Over 10,000 ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Zephyrian system. Are they Corvin Federation vessels? Vexhai asked hopefully. Perhaps the military alliance had changed their minds about helping. Thayek studied the sensor readings carefully. No, Chief Navigator. The energy signatures are unlike anything in our databases. The ship designs are primitive. Heavy armor plating, kinetic weapons, chemical propulsion systems. These appear to be from a pre-contact civilization. Before Vexhai could respond, a communication signal reached the planet. The transmission was crude but functional, broadcast on multiple frequencies in broken but understandable galactic standard. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Defense Force. We received your distress signal. We're here to help. The command center fell silent. A pre-contact species had traveled across the galaxy to answer their call for help. Vexhai stared at the tactical display showing the human fleet spreading out in attack formation. The ships looked brutal and functional, like weapons built by someone who understood war intimately. Zephyrian forces, please transmit current tactical situation and Void Swarm positions. The human admiral continued. We are beginning our attack run now. Vexhai quickly transmitted everything they had. Swarm movement patterns, weapon effectiveness data, evacuation routes for civilian ships. As the information flowed to the human fleet, Vexhai watched their response with growing amazement. The humans did not pause to analyze the data or develop careful strategies. They immediately split their massive fleet into smaller groups and began attacking the Void Swarm from multiple directions. Their approach was direct and aggressive, unlike anything the galactic community would consider civilized warfare. The first engagement occurred near the planet's fourth moon, where a large cluster of swarm creatures had been feeding on the orbital mining stations. The human ships opened fire with kinetic weapons that fired solid projectiles at incredible speeds. The crystalline creatures tried to absorb the energy as they had with Zephyrian weapons, but the human railguns delivered pure kinetic force that shattered their crystal matrices. But what shocked Vexhai most was what happened when the swarm creatures adapted. The crystalline beings began clustering together to distribute the kinetic impacts across multiple bodies. The logical response would have been to retreat and develop new weapons. Instead, the humans did something insane. They rammed their ships directly into the enemy formations. By the sacred crystals, whispered Thayek. They're using their vessels as guided missiles. The human ship, Relentless, crashed into a cluster of swarm creatures at full speed, its crew riding the ship to destruction rather than abandoning it. The explosion scattered dozens of crystalline beings and disrupted their coordination patterns. Other human vessels immediately exploited the chaos, pouring fire into the confused enemy formations. Across the system, similar scenes played out. When human ships were damaged beyond repair, their crews would pilot them into enemy concentrations. When their primary weapons ran out of ammunition, they improvised new ones from whatever materials were available. One cargo hauler began firing its entire inventory of construction equipment at the swarm, using steel beams and industrial tools as projectiles. The galactic observers monitoring the battle from safe distances watched in horror and fascination. The scholarly Etherians documented every unusual tactic with academic interest. The militaristic Corvin Federation studied the humans' disregard for conventional battle doctrine. The technologically advanced Nexus Collective analyzed their crude but effective weapons. None of them could understand what they were seeing. These humans fought with a combination of intelligence and madness that defied all established military theory. They were willing to sacrifice expensive equipment and even their own lives for tactical advantages that more civilized species would consider insignificant. The turning point came when the humans encountered their first swarm boarding attempts. The crystalline creatures were capable of cutting through ship hulls and fighting inside vessels, where their sharp crystal bodies gave them significant advantages. Most civilized species avoided close combat at all costs. The humans welcomed it. When swarm creatures boarded the destroyer Indomitable, Captain Marcus Torres led his crew in hand-to-hand combat, using whatever weapons they could find. Fire axes, industrial tools, even bare hands were used to fight the crystalline invaders. The humans discovered that the creatures were vulnerable to certain sonic frequencies, and within hours every ship in the fleet was broadcasting disruptive sound waves. Dr. Elizabeth Nakamura, working from her mobile laboratory aboard the research vessel Discovery, made an even more significant breakthrough. She developed a synthetic virus that could corrupt the swarm's crystalline matrix, causing their bodies to become brittle and fragmented. The bioweapon spread through enemy formations faster than their adaptation protocols could compensate. But perhaps the most devastating human innovation was their willingness to coordinate sacrifice. When a large swarm formation threatened to break through and attack the Zephyrian evacuation ships, 3 entire human battle groups positioned themselves as living shields. They absorbed the enemy assault, buying time with their lives while the civilian vessels escaped to safety. From the command center of the last Zephyrian city, Vexhai watched the impossible battle unfold. The humans were outnumbered and outgunned, fighting with primitive weapons against an enemy that had consumed entire star systems. By all logical calculations, they should have been defeated within hours. Instead, they were winning. The Void Swarm, which had adapted to every weapon and tactic the galaxy could field, struggled to counter the human approach to warfare. How do you adapt to an enemy that treats their own ships as expendable weapons? How do you predict the behavior of creatures that respond to impossible odds with increased aggression, rather than retreat? Chief Navigator, reported Thayek, the swarm formations are beginning to withdraw from the outer system. The human fleet is pursuing them. Vexhai nodded, still trying to process what they had witnessed. These humans had traveled across the galaxy to help strangers, using tactics that no civilized species would consider. They fought not with cold military precision, but with a desperate fury that came from something deeper than strategic calculation. Open a communication channel to the human admiral, Vexhai ordered. When Admiral Chen's image appeared on the display, Vexhai could see the exhaustion and determination in her alien features. Admiral Chen, this is Chief Navigator Vexhai. On behalf of all Zephyrians, I must ask, why did you come? Why did you risk everything for people you have never met? Chen was quiet for a moment, looking at something off-screen, probably a tactical display showing the ongoing battle. When she turned back, her expression was simple and direct. Because it was the right thing to do, she said, and because somebody had to. The transmission ended, leaving Vexhai staring at the empty screen. Across the galaxy, the established civilizations continued to monitor the battle, trying to understand what they were witnessing. They were seeing the emergence of something new and terrifying. A species that waged war not for conquest or survival, but for principles that transcended logic and self-interest. The Deathworlders had announced their presence to the galaxy, and the universe would never be the same. The battle for the Zephyrian system had been raging for 72 hours, and the humans were doing something the galaxy had never seen before. They were learning and adapting faster than their enemy. Captain Marcus. Torres stood on the bridge of his heavily damaged destroyer, Indomitable, watching as his crew made modifications to their weapon systems in real time. They had discovered that swarm creatures were vulnerable to specific sonic frequencies, and now every human ship was broadcasting these disruptive sound waves while fighting. Captain, called his weapons officer, we've managed to modulate the railgun targeting systems to match the frequency patterns. Each projectile now carries a sonic charge that activates on impact. Torres nodded grimly. Good work. Transmit the modification specs to the rest of the fleet. Let's see how the bugs like this new tune. Across the human fleet, similar innovations were taking place. Earth's greatest strength was not their technology or their numbers, but their ability to observe, learn and improvise solutions under pressure. What had taken the Void Swarm months to develop as adaptations, humans were countering within hours. Dr. Elizabeth Nakamura worked frantically in her mobile laboratory aboard the research vessel Discovery. She had managed to capture several intact swarm specimens during boarding actions, and her analysis was revealing crucial weaknesses in their biological structure. "Admiral Chen," she reported over the fleet communication network, "I've isolated the key vulnerability. The crystalline matrix that makes up their bodies relies on a specific protein chain for structural integrity. I can synthesize a virus that targets this protein. How long do you need?" Chen's voice crackled through the static of battle. "Give me 6 hours and I can have enough bioweapon to affect an entire swarm cluster. But Admiral, there's something else. The specimens I've examined show signs of a central coordination system. They're not just a hive mind, they're being directed by something much larger." Admiral Chen processed this information while watching the tactical displays on her flagship, Terra's Wrath. The human fleet had been reduced to about 60% of its original strength, but they were inflicting massive casualties on the Void Swarm. More importantly, they were preventing the enemy from adapting as quickly as usual. The secret was chaos. Human battle tactics were so unpredictable and varied that the swarm's collective intelligence could not establish patterns to counter them. One moment a human ship would use precision weapons fire, the next it would ram the enemy at full speed. Some vessels fought with coordinated unit tactics, while others seemed to operate on pure individual initiative. Commander Rodriguez of the converted cargo hauler New Horizon exemplified this approach. His ship had been stripped of its original cargo capacity and fitted with whatever weapons the crew could mount. At the moment, they were using their cargo manipulator arms to grab swarm creatures and throw them into the path of other human ships' weapons. "This is insane," muttered his first officer. "We're using our ship like a giant baseball bat." "And it's working," Rodriguez replied cheerfully. "The bugs can't adapt to crazy if they can't predict crazy." But the humans' most effective innovation was their willingness to coordinate sacrifice on a scale that amazed galactic observers. When conventional weapons proved insufficient, entire squadrons would position themselves as living shields to protect damaged vessels or evacuation ships. When ammunition ran low, ships would ram enemy formations to create openings for their allies. The Corvan Federation military observers watched these tactics with a mixture of horror and professional interest. Their own code of honor valued individual courage, but the humans seemed to operate on a completely different level of collective commitment. "They treat their vessels as expendable tools," reported General Korthak to his superiors. "Their crews show no hesitation in sacrificing themselves for tactical advantages that we would consider minor. It is disturbing to witness." The Etherian scholars were equally puzzled by human behavior. Their analysis focused on the psychological aspects of human warfare, trying to understand the mental processes that allowed such extreme self-sacrifice. "They appear to operate on emotional rather than logical decision-making processes," noted philosopher Erthis. "Their responses to danger include increased aggression rather than calculated withdrawal. This suggests a fundamentally different evolutionary development." The Nexus Collective's artificial intelligence networks ran continuous calculations, trying to predict human battle patterns. Every analysis came back with the same result: insufficient data for reliable predictions. The humans' tactics were too variable and context-dependent for their logical systems to process effectively. Meanwhile, the battle continued to evolve. The Void Swarm had begun clustering into larger formations, trying to overwhelm human positions through sheer mass. The humans responded by developing new weapons from whatever materials they had available. The mining vessel, Titan's Pride, had exhausted its conventional ammunition, but still carried thousands of tons of raw ore. Captain Lisa Park ordered her crew to load the ore into improvised cannons, turning industrial materials into kinetic projectiles. The strategy proved so effective that other mining ships quickly adopted it. "We're literally throwing rocks at them," laughed her weapons officer. "And it's working better than our fancy missiles." Dr. Nakamura's bioweapon was ready ahead of schedule. The synthetic virus, delivered through modified atmospheric probes, began spreading through swarm formations and causing their crystalline bodies to become brittle and unstable. The effect was devastating. Entire clusters of creatures would suddenly collapse as their structural integrity failed. But the most significant development came when the humans discovered the source of the swarm's coordination. Deep-range sensors detected massive energy signatures from the inner system, near the Zephyrian star itself. "Admiral," reported the sensor operator aboard Terra's Wrath, "we're reading something enormous near the primary star. Mass estimates suggest it's larger than most space stations." Admiral Chen studied the sensor data carefully. "Dr. Nakamura, could this be your central coordination system?" "It's possible," the scientist replied. "If there's a central intelligence directing the swarm, destroying it might cause the entire network to collapse." Chen made the decision that would define the final phase of the battle. "All ships, this is Admiral Chen. We're going after the source. Form up for assault formation and prepare for the fight of our lives." The human fleet, battered but determined, began moving toward the inner system. They left behind the scattered remains of thousands of void swarm creatures and the grateful transmissions of Zephyrian survivors. Ahead lay the most dangerous part of their mission, confronting whatever intelligence had orchestrated the consumption of entire civilizations. As they advanced, the galactic observers noted something remarkable in their reports. The humans had not just survived contact with the void swarm. They had forced an enemy that had consumed entire star systems to retreat and adapt to human tactics. These primitive Deathworlders had accomplished what no established galactic power had even attempted. The implications were staggering. If humans could defeat the void swarm, what did that say about the relative strength of galactic civilizations? More importantly, what would happen when these aggressive, unpredictable beings established themselves as a galactic power? Captain Torres, watching the star grow larger on his view screen, voiced what many in the fleet were thinking. "We came here to save strangers from extinction, but I think we might be changing something bigger than that." He was right. The galaxy was about to learn that compassion and fury, properly directed, could be more powerful than any weapon ever designed. The thing that waited for them near the Zephyrian star defied comprehension. Admiral Sarah Chen stared at the tactical display aboard Terra's Wrath and tried to process what her sensors were telling her. The object was massive beyond anything humanity had ever encountered, easily the size of Earth's moon, but clearly artificial. "My God," whispered her tactical officer. "What is that thing?" The Hive Queen, as Dr. Nakamura had designated it, hung in the radiation-soaked space near the star like a crystalline nightmare. Its surface writhed with millions of smaller void swarm creatures, constantly merging and separating from the main body. Energy patterns flowed across its structure in waves, coordinating the movements of every swarm unit across multiple star systems. "Admiral," came Dr. Nakamura's voice over the communication system. "The bio readings are incredible. This isn't just the command center, it's the source. Every swarm creature we've encountered was created by this thing. It's been growing and reproducing for centuries, maybe longer." Chen nodded grimly as she watched the readings. The human fleet, now reduced to fewer than 4,000 ships, faced an enemy that could theoretically consume their entire civilization without effort. Around her, the bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency, but she could see the fear in their eyes. "All ships, this is Admiral Chen," she broadcast to the fleet. "I won't lie to you. What we're facing should be impossible to defeat. But impossible has never stopped humans before. We're going to throw everything we have at this thing and see what happens." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Across the fleet, ships reported ready for final assault. Damaged vessels that should have retreated to safety requested permission to join the attack. Crews that had been fighting for days without rest volunteered for the most dangerous assignments. Captain Torres, his destroyer barely holding together after 3 days of combat, moved his ship into the first wave. "If we're going out swinging," he told his crew. Commander Rodriguez positioned his converted cargo hauler alongside the military vessels. His ship was never designed for this kind of fight, but his crew had welded additional armor and mounted every weapon they could find. "We came this far," he said simply. "We finished the job." The attack began with a coordinated barrage from every weapon the human fleet possessed. Railgun projectiles, nuclear missiles, energy beams, and improvised kinetic weapons all converged on the Hive Queen simultaneously. The massive creature absorbed the initial impacts, its crystalline surface rippling with absorbed energy. Then it responded. The counterattack was devastating. Beams of pure energy lanced out from the Hive Queen, each one capable of destroying a human ship with a single hit. Clouds of smaller swarm creatures erupted from its surface, moving to intercept the attacking fleet. The space around the star became a chaotic battlefield of explosions and debris. Terra's wrath took a direct hit that knocked out half her weapon systems. Admiral Chen felt the ship shudder around her as emergency systems activated. "Damage report! Hull breach on decks 7 through 12, called her chief engineer. "We've lost main engines and half our weapons. But we're still in the fight, Admiral." Across the fleet, similar scenes played out. The destroyer Defiant lost its entire forward section but continued firing with its remaining weapons. The cargo hauler Titan's Pride had its hull split open, but its crew kept fighting from the separated sections. Ships that would normally retreat for repairs instead pressed closer to the enemy. Dr. Nakamura, working frantically in her mobile laboratory, made a crucial discovery. "Admiral, the bioweapon is having an effect, but not the way I expected. The virus isn't destroying the Hive Queen directly. It's disrupting its ability to coordinate the smaller units." "Can you enhance the effect?" Chen asked while watching another human ship disappear in a flash of energy. "I can modify our remaining atmospheric probes to carry concentrated doses, but someone needs to get close enough to deploy them directly onto the creature's surface." Chen looked at her tactical display. Getting close to the Hive Queen meant flying through its defensive swarms and energy weapons. It would be suicide for any crew that attempted it. Every ship captain in the fleet volunteered immediately. "This is Captain Torres. Indomitable is ready for the deployment run. New Horizon requesting permission to carry the payload. We've got the strongest hull armor. Discovery can deploy the weapons. We've got the launch systems already installed." Chen closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of command. These people trusted her decisions, even when those decisions meant certain death. "All ships will participate. We do this together." The final assault was coordinated chaos. Every remaining human vessel moved toward the Hive Queen simultaneously, some carrying Dr. Nakamura's bioweapons, others providing covering fire and distraction. The massive creature responded with everything it had, filling space with defensive fire and swarm creatures. Ships died by the dozens. The research vessel Endeavor sacrificed itself to clear a path for other vessels. The mining ship Asteroid's Edge rammed a cluster of defensive creatures using its momentum to scatter the enemy formation. One by one, the human ships pressed closer to their impossible target. Captain Torres managed to get Indomitable within deployment range, but his ship was torn apart by energy beams as he released his bioweapon payload. For Earth, he transmitted as his destroyer exploded. Commander Rodriguez followed, his converted cargo hauler somehow surviving long enough to deploy its weapons before being consumed by crystalline creatures. "Tell my kids I was proud to serve," were his final words. Dr. Nakamura, aboard the heavily damaged Discovery, watched as her bioweapons spread across the Hive Queen's surface. The virus began disrupting the creature's coordination networks, causing spasms and irregularities in its energy patterns. "It's working. The central coordination is breaking down." Admiral Chen, her flagship dying around her, ordered the final phase of the attack. "All remaining ships concentrate fire on the disrupted sections." "Everything we have left." The last few dozen human vessels poured their remaining ammunition into the Hive Queen. Nuclear warheads, kinetic projectiles, energy beams, and improvised weapons all found their mark on a creature whose defenses had been crippled by biological warfare. Massive sections of the crystalline surface began to crack and fragment. The Hive Queen's death throes were spectacular and terrifying. Its surface erupted in explosions as internal systems failed. The coordinated swarms of smaller creatures suddenly became chaotic and unfocused, attacking each other as often as the human ships. Energy patterns flickered and died across its massive structure. When the end came, it was sudden. The entire creature collapsed in on itself, its crystalline structure losing cohesion as the biological virus completed its work. The explosion that followed lit up the entire star system, visible from Zephyros itself. With the Hive Queen's destruction, the Void Swarm collapsed. Across multiple star systems, the crystalline creatures lost their coordination and began attacking each other or simply shutting down. The threat that had consumed entire civilizations was ended. Admiral Chen found herself in command of fewer than 200 surviving ships. 60% of humanity's spacefaring capability had been destroyed in the battle. The cost of victory was staggering. But as rescue ships from across the galaxy finally arrived, too late to help fight, but in time to witness the aftermath, they found something remarkable. The surviving humans were already working to rebuild, to heal the wounded, and to help the rescued Zephyrians establish new colonies. Chief Navigator Vexhai, now aboard one of the human medical ships, watched as human doctors worked alongside Zephyrian physicians to treat the wounded of both species. "Why?" Vexhai asked Admiral Chen during one of her visits. "Why did you sacrifice so much for strangers?" Chen, her arm in a sling and her face bearing new scars, considered the question carefully. "Because someone needed help and we were able to provide it. That's what civilized beings do for each other." The galactic observers, monitoring from their safe distances, struggled to understand what they had witnessed. The primitive humans had accomplished what no established power had even attempted. They had faced extinction-level odds and emerged victorious through a combination of tactics that no civilized species would consider logical. The implications rippled across the galaxy. If these Deathworlders could defeat the Void Swarm, what did that say about the strength of galactic civilization? More importantly, what would happen now that humanity had announced its presence in such a dramatic fashion? The answer would reshape galactic politics for generations. The species that the galaxy had dismissed as primitive barbarians had proven that sometimes the most important battles were won not through superior technology or careful strategy, but through the simple willingness to fight for what was right, no matter the cost. Humanity had saved the Zephyrians and destroyed the Void Swarm. But more than that, they had shown the galaxy a different way of thinking about conflict, sacrifice, and moral obligation. The Deathworlders had arrived, and the universe would never be the same. As Admiral Chen stood on the observation deck of her medical ship, watching human and Zephyrian crews working together to repair their vessels, she reflected on the price of their victory